One of the most pressing issues here will have to be climate change. We do know it is an existential crisis. You go back to the political report where the president was calling for more concerted efforts in dealing with this and calling for more global action, but also in terms of the country, South Africa. And joining us now is the Environmental Affairs Minister Barbara Creecy. Minister Creecy, thank you so much indeed for your time. Obviously, it's a very important occasion to reflect on policy positions, and I would imagine as well climate change is one of those issues really where we need like a very clear policy in terms of the governing party.
Yes, I think you've already reflected some of the issues that were in the political report. Obviously, I think that the ANC as a whole would have concerns about the fundamental issues of climate justice. How are we going to pay for this transition? How are we going to ensure that this transition promotes energy security in our country? And how are we going to make sure that this transition deals with the fundamental developmental challenges we face of poverty, inequality, and unemployment? Now, you would know that issues of climate justice and making sure that those who would be in the existing coal industries are not left behind is fundamental to the concerns that we would be interested in and concerned about. No sensible person thinks we're going to wake up tomorrow morning and switch off our coal-fired power stations. Our net zero commitment also means that coal will continue to be part of our energy mix into the 2040s. We have to be ensuring that this transition happens in a manner and at a pace that our country can afford, but also in a manner and at a pace that is compatible with our overall developmental objectives. So there are opportunities in the new green industries. I think the question that would always be of concern is, will those opportunities be in the places where in the longer term we might find workers and communities becoming vulnerable? And that is why you would see that there's a lot of debate around what is the form and nature of the financing that is available. Grant financing is of fundamental importance because if you're talking about developing new industries in Mpumalanga, you need that grant financing for feasibility studies, you need it for reskilling and upskilling of workers, and you need it for all the things that go into creating an economic ecosystem that would not have a short-term revenue stream. So I think that our approach to these issues has to take account of the fact that at the moment our country is 90% dependent on coal-fired energy, that we have a long-term trajectory, but we must be managing this trajectory in a responsible manner that doesn't leave communities and vulnerable workers behind.
And a very important issue, Minister, that you raised around the funding of the just energy transition. Is there a consensus, though, amongst the delegates, in terms of how they are refining the policies around this area? Are they seeing the importance of making sure that we accelerate this just energy transition?
Well, I think, as I've said, the way in which we approach this transition is dependent on the financing that's available, and it's also dependent on the form of that financing. Nobody wants to see a situation where we are increasing the indebtedness of our country and we're placing a burden on current and future South Africans. So I think that obviously these transitions are happening across the globe. As they say, everybody is crossing the river by feeling the stones. But we have to approach it in a manner that is responsible, that is consistent, as I've said, with our broader development needs of fighting poverty and creating jobs and above all else, creating energy security.
And just before I let you go, Minister, climate change once again. I mean, we've seen the most horrific floods, like in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, and many other parts of the country. Is there like a clear understanding from the delegates as they go through the policies, as they're about to make the adoption, in terms of making sure that we achieve all these targets that you have?
Well, I suppose issues of climate change have always been, up until relatively recently, in the realm of scientific discourse. I think that what's happening now is that all of us are living through the realities and the terrible implications that are going to happen in countries where people are already experiencing conditions of acid poverty and vulnerability. And I suppose that as we all reach a clearer understanding of the difficulties that lie ahead, we will obviously also be prioritizing adaptation so that we can build climate resilience in communities, in the economy, in our agricultural sector, in water security. I think these are all issues that we are gradually coming to understand will be fundamental as we move into the future.
All right, Minister, thank you so much indeed for your time. Of course, Environmental Affairs Minister there, Barbara Creecy, talking about very important issues. We know the issue of climate change, it's quite important. We've really seen the most horrendous floods where so many people have just been killed and the infrastructure damaged. So it is one of the most important issues that the ANC delegates are looking at as they're looking at the policies of the governing party. Khayelihle Khumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.